U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new 25% tariff on imported cars, starting April 2nd. This move expands his ongoing trade war and raises concerns in the auto industry. Experts warn that the tariffs could drive up car prices and disrupt production, affecting both U.S. automakers and international suppliers.
And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. Friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
In response, Canada is gearing up for retaliation. Prime Minister Mark Carney called the tariffs a direct attack and promised to defend Canadian workers and companies.
President Trump announced 25% tariffs against our auto industry. And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of. We've announced, of course, retaliatory tariffs. We have other options for those retaliatory tariffs.
A high-level cabinet meeting will determine the country's next steps, including potential retaliatory tariffs. The move threatens the integrated North American auto industry. Worldwide News Report. President Donald Trump declared on March 26 that the U.S. must secure Greenland for national security reasons. As tensions rise over U.S. interest in annexing the island, Trump stressed that without Greenland, America can't maintain strong national security.
We need Greenland for national security and international security, so I think we'll go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland, and the world needs us to have Greenland, including Denmark. Denmark has to have us have Greenland, and we'll see what happens, but if we don't have Greenland, we can't have great international security.
Denmark's prime minister criticized the White House's pressure on Greenland, calling it unacceptable. She expressed resistance, emphasizing that Denmark and Greenland would not yield to U.S. demands. In response, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance will now visit Greenland's Pituffik Space Base, instead of the planned dog sled race, marking a shift in the visit's agenda. Worldwide News Report. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth responded to The Atlantic's report on March 26, denying that war plans were discussed in a Signal chat. He dismissed the claims, pointing out that no names, locations, or classified details were shared, calling the report a media hoax.
Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning, out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans, because they know it's not war plans.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio weighed in, confirming that the group chat was set up for coordination, but calling the addition of a journalist a mistake.
Obviously, someone made a mistake. Someone made a big mistake and added a journalist. Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that thing. Well, the Pentagon says it was not. And not only did it say it was not, they make very clear that it didn't put in danger anyone's life or the mission.
While the Pentagon insists no classified information was leaked, the White House is investigating the incident further. Worldwide News Report.
On March 25, Iran's currency rial hit a new low of 1,039,000 to the US dollar, marking a dramatic fall of more than 50% since President Pezeshkian took office last August. The steep devaluation comes amid soaring inflation and ongoing economic pressure from US sanctions. The latest financial crisis coincides with stalled negotiations between the US and Iran. US warned of military action over Iran's nuclear program, but Supreme Leader Khamenei rejected talks, calling them a deception. As a result, Iranians are turning to hard currencies and gold, further destabilizing the rial. Worldwide News Report.
On March 27, thousands of Israeli protesters gathered in Tel Aviv, demanding new elections and the return of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. The protest follows a controversial law passed by Israel, which could lead to a constitutional crisis, by changing the committee responsible for appointing judges.
We feel we have a horrible government. We want to get to an elections quick. We want to have an inquiry into what happened, into the disaster of October 7. And we want the guy who is responsible, who is the Prime Minister, we want him to accept the responsibility, step down and go to a quick election.
The protests also coincide with Israel's resumed military operations against Hamas in Gaza, breaking a 2-month ceasefire. As the fighting escalates, Israelis are calling for renewed negotiations to secure the release of the remaining hostages and bodies still held by the militant group. Worldwide News Report. On March 27, hundreds of new cars were spotted at the Spanish port of Santander after President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on imported vehicles, escalating the global trade war.
And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. Friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
The European Union is preparing its response, with concerns over the impact on both the U.S. and European economies. Spanish officials say the tariffs will primarily hurt the U.S., but Spanish-made components could be affected. European Commission warned the tariffs would harm both businesses and consumers. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called it a direct attack, signaling retaliatory measures are being considered. Worldwide News Report.
President Donald Trump have vowed to deport foreign pro-Palestinian protesters, accusing them of supporting Hamas and anti-Semitism. However, critics argue that these protesters are simply expressing opposition to Israeli policies, not supporting terrorism. Some Jewish groups have joined the protests, emphasizing the distinction between supporting Palestinian rights and endorsing Hamas. The crackdown has extended to students and scholars. Turkish national Öztürk and Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil are among those detained, facing accusations of Hamas support, which they deny. Meanwhile, a Lebanese doctor was deported for alleged ties to Hezbollah, further fueling concerns over U.S. foreign policy and civil liberties. Worldwide News Report.